Okay, it's time to tackle our bricks. So my first step, I am going to create a base, a very thin base layer, okay? And we've talked about this before, but when we start to do our shading, we want to get the angle of our pen correct and where it's getting the proper amount of ink coming out that we want. And then we are going to move our arm as we come down the paper. We're going to move our arm back by our shoulder, not like this with our wrist or our fingers. Okay, and the other thing, as we come back and forth like this, we are going to move our arm by our elbow and not our wrist, and that'll help keep straight lines and an even value as we come down this section of paper that we are trying to shade nice and light and even with our pen. And I always like to go very light and then go over it more if I need to. I just think I have more control, and especially with pen, you can't take the ink back off. You can always add more, but you can't take it back off. So I do it nice and light and even. And if I need to do it more than once, then I do it more than once. And then I'm gonna come and go in this direction as well. And when I finish, and this one's is a very, very light value, but I am looking for it to have sort of a fabric feel to it, to the texture of what I've put on so far. So it's nice and light. And then from here, I'm going to start to sketch out the layout of my bricks. So I kind of use my reference as a guide for how wide I want my bricks to be. And we've got 3, 1 in the middle and 2 on either end, and they're kind of going off the edge. So again, if I am doing a practice for my first time, then I'm going to come in and do it. I'm gonna follow pretty close to what my reference is. So again, I'm gonna sketch this in very, very, very light, because then if I'm unhappy with something, I can mask it away if I haven't put it in too dark. So very, very lightly, I'm adding these in. And that's my first row. My second row of bricks is gonna be based off of this first one. I'm gonna put this middle seam right here in the middle of this brick. And I want it, you know, an even width for my bricks. And this brick, it's gonna come all the way back. So this brick is kind of ends here, and this one is really long. So I am gonna make a little bit of an adjustment here because I kind of shifted this one shorter over on this side and longer. So to make that adjustment and make this still come out looking good, I'm gonna cut this brick off on this side. And then this brick, well, it's probably gonna get cut off also, but it's gonna come real close over here. And again, roll light, roll faint, trying to keep them parallel and as even as I can. Then I'm gonna come down for my next row. I'm gonna try to make the same distance, and I'm gonna make them even here. I want it the same width this way. And this brick is gonna come off the edge. This one, so we want, again, we want our seams up here to line up. And I feel like I got this brick a little like skinny. So I'll correct that a little bit, and that's why when I say do your lines really light, I can mask that away when I start doing all my detail shading. And then I want this seam to match the one down here. So I use that as my guide. This seam is gonna match that side. Light and loose. The goal here just being that I'm trying to draw them like the same size, same width, same length, all that. So now that I come down here, we're gonna wanna match these seams. And this one's gonna come off my page. Match these seams up here. And this is just really good practice for trying to get, you know, your uniform shapes and even spacings and things like that. And this last row is going to go off the bottom. Okay, so now I have the outline of my bricks. My next step from here, I would come through and if we look at our reference, our bricks, generally, this one's a little lighter, but the bricks are generally just a touch more value than the grout. So I'm gonna come through and I'm gonna try to shade in just a little bit more on my bricks. And I'm keeping it coming out very light so I can really control how dark my value is on each of these bricks, because I don't want it like a ton yet, because if you look here, the value changes within the brick quite a bit. So I'm just kind of wanting to add a little bit of a feel of a darker value to the brick surface than the grout surface. And again, trying to stay in the lines. The cool thing about doing the bricks is they are uneven, they're rough, so we don't need it to be all perfect and super symmetrical and straight lines and even values. It can be a little bit, have a little bit of irregularity and difference to it, and it's okay. Now the key to that is making it look random and irregular. Okay, so now I have a slight extra layer over my bricks. Now I'm gonna come and start to do, like, define out each brick. So if you look at the bottoms of the bricks are much darker than the tops, and it's because the bricks stick out from the wall, and so they're being shadowed underneath a little bit. So as I come through, I want to darken up the bottom, and I want it to be random and rough because it's a rough brick, right? I don't want it to be like a straight even line. And then we want to add in some textures. So I'm adding little cracks. We got some little divots in the rock or in the brick. And then we're gonna want just some variation in the value, right? It's not all one color throughout the brick. So I just add a little bit all around in there, right? And essentially I'm gonna go brick by brick, and I'm going to increase the bottom with irregular And one of the things I look for, like here in the edge of this brick, the line doesn't come up and touch the edge, and it should, so I'll do that. I tend to like to add some of my darkening around edges and corners for like a vignette feel. But again, that's just like, they just need to be kind of irregular. And then we just move on to the next one. And again, the key is that it doesn't look like a pattern, right? Because our minds, we really want to create this pattern, and we don't want our bricks to look like a pattern or to look the same. This brick happens to be a little bit like lighter, so I can kind of leave it maybe a little bit lighter and not have a ton of different texture and things in there, maybe just a little bit. And this one has sort of like a plaster change here. You can darken that area up a little bit. And kind of create some of the little textures that we see. And I notice like it's a little darker at the top, so make it a little darker. Then I just add in some value changes. I didn't want that line, but it's okay. And I'm just kind of coming brick by brick and roughing it up. And I tend to just be like really, really faint and light on my details, and just kind of randomly move my hand around, and a little tiny bit is a lot. Like it can be very subtle. So right over here, if this isn't a nice clean edge, it's going to look kind of messy. Okay, so now we have our bricks kind of, you know, all defined, but I'll come through. Our grout isn't perfectly even either, and it's a little bit darker kind of underneath the bricks. But again, we want it lighter than the bricks. So if I get it darkened up and I make the adjustments in the grout and I think like the brick isn't standing out enough or something, then I can add more to the brick. And that's the beauty of keeping things light until, you know, you're sure. And I can make the values what I want them to be. And I can define lines more. And your grout, sometimes your grout will have cracks in it, right? So you can add the cracks. And I very much, I like nice, clean, sharp edges. I think that cleans up artwork and makes it look kind of nice. So it'll kind of come along, and again, next to the brick is going to be just a tiny touch darker than away from the brick because of just how the light is going to hit it. So I tend to, and I'm mostly filling it, giving it just a touch all on the same sides, like the lights kind of come in this direction. And again, I just kind of give it an overall look and think, okay, well, I want this darker, that darker, I want more value here, there, whatever. And I can do that at the very end here, and I can also increase some of my depth in certain spots as I come through, and I just kind of increase the value. Like if it's just a little bit darker, makes it a little bit more depth to it in strategic areas, right? And I just kind of play with it until I'm happy. And then there I have it, brick texture in ink pen.